Hi everyone, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. If you watched my previous video, then you will see that I talked about my favourite books of 2021. Well, in this video, I am going to talk about my almost favourite books of 2021. So all of these books are books that I rated 4 stars or 4.5 stars, books that were very close to being in my favourites list of last year. Again, I've got 10 books and I'm going to start from my least almost favourite to my number one almost favourite. So without further ado, we're going to get straight into it. So at number 10, we have got The Good Son by Yoo Jeong. So this is a thriller written by a South Korean author. And I read this in October for the Spooktober readathon, and I was very pleasantly surprised by this book. I loved the way this book was written and how it delved into the lives of the characters and discusses their relationships with each other and their pasts and things like that. It wasn't just, completely focused on the mystery in the story, but I did really like the mystery and trying to piece together what happened. I really, really loved the whole process of trying to figure out what really happened and things like that. I loved it. And yeah, I really, really liked the dark atmosphere in this book, and I loved the setting of Seoul, and yeah, I was just very pleasantly surprised by this, and I am definitely going to be seeking out more books by this author. It was just a really cool, really intense, dark little thriller. So at number 9, we have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is a romance. This was my first dive into Christina Lauren. I'd never read anything by them beforehand, and this is one of their most popular books, and this book was just so much fun to read, and I loved watching the relationship between our protagonists develop. I thought it was a really good representation of the hate to love trope. I loved the dialogue between them, and I thought it was so funny at times. I loved the location as well, and just had, the really good summer holiday vibes. This is the perfect book to read during summer. This book also mentioned my favourite band, Muse, but I knocked off a star because the characters decided they didn't want to listen to Muse because they didn't like it, so they turned it off, which I thought was very rude of them. I'm joking, but yeah, I really like this one. At number 8, we have Misery by Stephen King. So this was the third Stephen King book I've read, and again, really, really solid 4-star book. This one was very messed up, and I really enjoyed how messed up this story was. I loved how gory it was at times. I think Stephen King does body horror really well, and there are definitely some very graphic depictions of that in this book. One in particular involving a like one of those lawnmowers that you can sit on, and yeah, that was some fucked up shit, let me tell you. But this book was intense and claustrophobic, and I was really frustrated for the main character in this book. I thought it was a very interesting story as well, of this author being kidnapped and being forced to finish his, or to continue his series in a way that the fan wanted him to. I thought that was very very interesting. At number 7 is The One by John Marrs. So this is the only book by John Marrs that I have rated 4 stars so far. The other 3 that I've read have all been 5 stars. Not that 4 stars is bad by any means. The One has a very interesting and very unique concept, again, as with a lot of John Marrs's books. This one centers around relationships and this dating company that allows you to send off your DNA, and you get matched with someone who has a DNA match to you. So it's kind of like, online dating, but with DNA test kits. And this book follows a certain amount of characters who have used this dating service, and they find their match, and they end up in pretty unique and individual situations. And it was very interesting to see how those situations played out and how the characters dealt with them. And yeah, I really liked this one. It wasn't as exciting as books that I have read by him previously, like The Passengers and The Minders, but again, it still had some really good twists, and it still had those kind of characters that I was very interested in. There is this one character in particular called Christopher, who I think was the one that I was most intrigued about. And if you've read it, you will know why. If you want to know why, then go and read it. So next at number 6 we have The Night Before by Wendy Walker. So this is another thriller, and this was the first book by Wendy Walker that I have read. I've heard very mixed things about Wendy Walker. She has written some good books apparently. She's also written some not so good books, but isn't that the same with every author, you know? This was one that I thought was going to be like a 3-star at most. So when I ended up rating it 4 stars, I was very surprised. This was a really good little thriller. This was very well paced, and it had a lot of really cool twists and turns. This is another one that I thought I knew where it was going, how it was going to end, and then it just took a completely different turn and ended in a very unexpected way. But this has a dual perspective as well. This is about 2 sisters. One of them goes missing, and so we're seeing things from her perspective the night before, or the night of, sorry, that she goes missing, and the events that led up to that. And then we're also following the other sister, who is trying to find out what happened to her sister and get her back, figure out, you know, where she is, all of that. And yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was fun. And what more can I say? So at number 5 we have 13 Stories by Jonathan Sims, and I did actually do a review of this, and I'll post that up there if you want to go and watch it. This is another book that has a very interesting take on the haunted house trope. This is a haunted apartment block in London, and it follows 13 characters who live or work or associated with that apartment block in some way. Some of them are rich, some of them aren't, and there are some strange things happening. It's kind of like 13 individual short stories that all connect together to culminate in the end of this book. And the thing that I loved the most about this book was the discussions that it had, the social commentary that it had about society and the differences between the rich and the poor, the gentrification that is happening within poorer parts of London in particular, as this book is set in Tower Hamlets, which is like notoriously one of the most poor parts of London. And it also talks about, you know, the exploitation of workers and the exploitation of the less privileged. And I thought that was really well done within the story. And I thought it, you know, drove the motivations of the characters and drove the story forward in a very unique and interesting way. And yeah, there were some really good standout scenes in this book, some really creepy moments that are just seared into my brain. The one with the plumber is very, you know, it's in there forever. I will be having nightmares about that. But yeah, I was really hooked with this one, and I was very pleasantly surprised with it. I'd never heard of this book or this author before, and it's one of those that I haven't really seen anyone talk about. So this is me telling you to go and give it a go. At number 4 we have Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. So this is a young adult contemporary about a girl called Simone who has HIV. So this book talks about very heavy but very important topics, and it does talk about HIV. It talks about what HIV is, and how it is treated and how it affects those who have it. And it does a very good job of destigmatizing HIV. It's one of those illnesses that is still very taboo to talk about, and people think that if you have it, then you are dirty. But people have HIV for a myriad of different reasons, not just because they've had sex. In this case, Simone was born with it. I think her mother had HIV, and she was born with it. And it's always been a part of her life. And I love how Simone is very determined to break that stigma and to educate people on HIV and how she copes with it. And this book was very educational, and I thought it was really well done. This book is also very sex positive. Cameron Garrett has done a really good job of letting young adults, teenagers, know that it's okay to have sex, but if you want to do that, you can do it safely. And I know in this book, Simone has two very loving fathers who are very supportive of her and who are very open to having these very tough conversations with her about sex and relationships. And I just loved it. It was so refreshing and so thought-provoking. I didn't necessarily care for the whole musical story in this, because they're practicing for a musical. I didn't really care for that, but just the discussion that it had around HIV and sex and relationships and sexuality, I thought it was really well done, and I think it's really important, and I encourage everyone to read this. So at number 3, we have Yes Daddy by Jonathan Parks Ramage, and this is another one that talks about a very heavy yet very important topic. And this is gothic. It's kind of like a gothic thriller set in New York, I believe. And it's centered around this young gay man who gets into a relationship with a much older man who is, I think he's like a theatre director or a writer. And this book was inspired by the Me Too movement, and it kind of focuses on the different aspect of the Me Too movement. A lot of the Me Too movement has been focusing on sexual abuse and sexual violence towards women, which is very important and does need to be talked about. But this book addresses the other side of that, and how young gay men are sexually assaulted and exploited within the entertainment industry and within privileged communities. It's a very dark and distressing book, and there are a lot of trigger warnings for a lot of really abhorrent things, so make sure you go and check them out if you are interested in reading this, because it's not going to be for everybody and it is quite harrowing. But I really learned something from this book, and I didn't like the story all that much. I wasn't that invested in it. I did feel very frustrated for the main character because I wanted him to succeed and I wanted him to break free from this thing that he had found himself in. But the message behind it and the things that it taught me was really eye-opening. And that's why this book is in this list. So at number 2 is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this is another Chinese-inspired fantasy. It is set in Shanghai in the 1920s, and it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. Sounds amazing. Well, it was really good. Yeah, I just love the concept of this. I love the setting of the 1920s in Shanghai, China. It was a very politically tense time for that part of the world, and it definitely added a very rich kind of atmosphere to the story and added a whole other layer to what was going on in the book and the characters' motivations and relationships with each other. and I love the fantasy element of it as well. I thought it was just very well done. It was beautifully written. I do really like Chloe Gong's writing style. I love Juliet as a character. She is my favourite character of 2021. She is one of my favourite female characters ever. I love how feisty she was, how determined she was, how clever she was, but I also liked that she had a vulnerable side and she wasn't afraid to show it. I thought she was really well written, really well fleshed out. This book also ended on a very frustrating cliffhanger, so I do need to pick up the second book in the series so I can find out what happens. Hopefully that'll be soon. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. And then at number 1 we have got Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Naguns. This is another fantasy. This one is inspired by Natasha Naguns' Malaysian heritage. There are a lot of elements of Malaysian culture woven into the world within this book. I thought the world building could have been done a little bit more in depth. I don't know. But yeah, this was very interesting. Again, I love the main character, another really good, really well written female character. I love the romance in this book as well. And again, this is another book that talks about a very heavy topic. It does talk about sexual assault and sexual violence against young women. And it had a lot of important messages to say on that matter. And I also love the hierarchy within this book and how that was done. You know, and this whole idea of castes, and you know, you've got the paper caste and they're like the lowest of society, and that's, you know, what the main character in this book is, and how they serve the king and things. I thought this was very interesting. I just really enjoyed this one. And again, I need to pick up the next few books in the series because I've heard they're really good. Yeah, go and read it. Okay guys, so those are my almost favourite books of 2021. I wanted to do this video because I wanted to give a shout out to all of these books that weren't quite 5 stars but still did a lot for me, and books that I still highly encourage everyone to read, and books that I still think about every now and then and want to reread in the future, hopefully. So that is it for this video. The next video that I will be posting will be my worst books of 2021, so stay tuned for that. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've talked about in today's video and whether you agree with me or not. Let me know what your almost favourites of last year were as well, and who knows, I might read some of them in the future. But yeah, thanks so much for watching guys. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you can see more videos from me in the future, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.